Thanks. So let's go backward in time to last night when all the numbers in battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania were too close to call, but were looking good for the president. Then all of a sudden we get these vote dumps overnight, and now Biden appears to be leading in some of those states. So are we right to be suspicious about this?
Absolutely. It's clearly a steal in my view. And, one thing to expect the steal, I think, it's another thing to actually address it and if possible, stop it. One thing from the presidential address that we heard is President himself anticipated the possibility of a bunch of mysterious Biden favorable ballots appearing at 4 or 5 in the morning. Well, his team really needed to be on top of that. And one thing that I was telling a lot of people on the campaign, a lot of people close to this in the White House, really just making sure that they understood, said you cannot go to sleep tonight. You cannot be asleep at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. And sure enough, unfortunately, I was not listened to in that respect. Some people did go to sleep, and when they woke up, they found that these fairly substantial leads that they held in these key states had evaporated not only overnight, but in the space of just a few hours in the dead of night, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, in particularly suspect areas. And I think, it's one thing, it's absolutely a travesty that they're stealing it, but it's a travesty on our part that we're not prepared and doing what it takes. And there are certain key recommendations that I outline on revolver.news. There's a new piece out, 5 steps the Trump campaign needs to do now in order to stop this steal.
And so in your opinion, what would those steps be? Because we see, for example, the Trump campaign is filing
Right.
a lawsuit in Michigan to stop
Yeah.
ballot counting there until there's greater
Yeah.
oversight. We're seeing some other issues. What would you like to see?
All right. Yeah. On this piece that I mentioned, revolver.news, it gets into it fairly extensively. Just the short version, the first item, as you mentioned, be ready for the court battle. It's going to be a bloodbath in the courts, and it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court in many contexts. And the key here is just making sure that the legitimate ballots are the ones that are counted. If only legitimate ballots are counted, we win. Battle it out on the courts. Be ready because the other side is ready. The other component of this is, there's a big advantage to the states that have Democrat leaders. And in fact, sure enough, the states that have Democrat leaders are curiously the places where the discrepancy with the polls are the least. The places with Republican leaders, you see a huge difference between the polls and what actually happened, indicating that, this is probably a healthy thing going on in the state. In the Democrat states, you see the opposite. There are some advantages, however, that we can really implement in the Republican states, and that is seat the electors now. Seat the appropriate electors and make sure that that reflects the accurate and legitimate tally of votes. And this is the thing that can be done by the states that are controlled by Republicans. An additional component, perhaps the most important component, is the narrative component. A huge part of this is the narrative war, and the left has already been setting this up so that Biden is the presumptive winner. That's why they didn't call those states last night. They didn't want to call Georgia, North Carolina, because they wanted to seed into people's minds that Biden was the default winner. And so that anything Trump did to stop this steal could be reinterpreted by the mainstream media narrative as a coup attempt on Trump's part, which is ridiculous. But that's why they were doing what they were doing. Trump needs to get ahead of this narratively and not only declare victory in states in which he's won a vast majority of legitimate votes, he needs to do rallies in these states and make a real substantial presence known in these states to counteract the left's narrative and let it be known by his supporters and all the people who voted for him that he is the presumptive winner and it's actually the other side trying to steal this from him.